Hey guys, today I wanted to do a little farm tour and kind of update on how the fertility situation is going. We don't use chemical fertilizers. We don't use really organic fertilizers, at least store-bought organic fertilizers. And vast majority of our fertility comes from right here. And so I kind of wanted to trace, from the chicken coop, how do we process the chickens' poop and their bedding into bioavailable nutrients for our plants, and just kind of showcase that it is really possible to actually do that. You don't have to invest in massive quantities of fertility each year. At least from what I can tell, it seems like our plants are doing pretty good. We're growing thousands, maybe tens of thousands of technically little individual plants, not including the weeds. And in some places of our garden, we'll showcase a lot of what we got going on. Our farm, our gardens, our rampant planting, and some places we haven't been able to really process enough of this material to make compost for that area yet. This is our chicken bedding. I've talked a lot about this before. It is very dry right now. I actually water this quite often. And so I think if I dig down a little bit, it'll probably, it's like the top couple inches is pretty dry, and then it's pretty damp below. I just like to use a pitchfork to bring some of this to the surface and mix it up, and then the chickens redisperse it. This is a pile that I made. It was quite high and they tore it down and spread it back. And every time that they do that, they're shredding up materials and actually just making, and like as they poop on it, just makes this really nice compost basically. It's practically soil at this point. A couple other things while we're in here, I just wanted to showcase my very low tech water and food setup. This 3/4 inch PVC Schedule 40 pipe is hooked up to a 50-gallon rain barrel. I just have this little hose attachment. Crazy simple. Basically, it's just hanging here, and I have these poultry nipples that the chickens come, and you just have to tap them. You've probably seen them, and it'll give you water when you tap it. Just wanted to say, I went to great lengths to keep this thing from leaking. I taped these when they were screwing them in. I used that PVC glue. I caulked, and then I used wood glue on the outside. All in the attempts that these would not leak, because I've never really been able to get them to screw into PVC and not leak. All of these are leak proof, except for this one. And it drops a little teensy little drop probably every minute. So I am thrilled with that result. Not really wasting any water. The water just kind of comes in here, and then I actually didn't even glue any of this PVC stuff on, so I can just pull this cap off. I can shut off the water, pull the cap, wash it out. It's very simple, doesn't need to be complex. And this is plenty. I've got 5 nipples for our dozen hens. And then for the feeders, it's just 3-inch PVC. I have a couple different models, but the whole goal here, you've probably seen similar stuff, is just to keep them from being able to poop inside of their feed, which chickens love to do for some reason. So I fill them up from the outside, comes down, and then they just stick their heads all the way in, and they can scratch out feed, and it's great because they can fill these up like once every couple weeks. There you go. I'm still setting up some roosts in this area. Kind of have been workshopping different things. This is very unstable, so not really a good roost for them. I need to make this place a little bit more enjoyable. I also do let them out from this hatch that I'll show you in a sec to be able to just kind of roam about in the shade and dig up bugs and process other materials elsewhere. So if you've seen any of our videos before, you know this hatch just kind of swings right open and latches in place, and then I can scrape out their bedding. And I usually just make my first pile here. For this one, I just added water, nothing else. And so it hasn't really heated up that much. It's heated up to maybe like mid-80s Fahrenheit. It needs more nitrogen-rich material added for it to be able to heat up further. It's pretty broken down as far as the texture goes. It's really nice and fine. It's nice to be able to hot compost it to just get more of the kind of right microbes established in here, kill off any potential things, like bad things that are in there from the manure, or if I've got weeds in there, it's nice to kill off the seeds. The main thing that I do though, right now, the system that we've got right now that works great, is that every couple weeks I just pull out chicken bedding, and by that point I've got a couple of our bokashi buckets that are filled up from just our household waste, or the weeds, or the flower stems, stalks that are left over. I can incorporate the bokashi fermented food scraps and stuff into the piles, and then they heat up. And so I'll take this pile probably in the next couple days here, and I'll flip it into the first bay. I guess this is bay 0, and then I'll flip it here. and add and incorporate some bokashi food scraps in here. I've actually already got a couple buckets ready to go. Got a bucket in there, just need to pull that stuff out. Here's an example of a pile actually that has been rocking high temperatures, and it's just starting to come down. It was in the gray zone, the 130 to 160 range, which is where I like it. Now it's come down to the 110. Again, super nice textured stuff. I'm gonna flip this one more time into this bay and see if it continues its decomposition process, or if it has any more nitrogen left to kind of stabilize. And then that will be ready to use. So it'll be ready to just be shipped out to wherever we need it in our garden. We've placed the chicken coop pen setup right in the middle, so we can either go up into the front yard or up into the backyard. Let's go into the backyard. So we're still finalizing the garden beds in this lower area. This is our first year back on this property. We got some land that we're still clearing, some like just yard debris that's built up over time. In this area, behind me, we've established 5 25-foot-ish long by 4 feet wide garden beds. And this is our perennial flowers garden beds. So we've got things like lupin and our dahlias, which are technically not perennials, but we have our dahlias in here. And then we've got yarrow and delphinium and violas. I'm getting word from behind the camera that we're actually going to try to perennialize the dahlias by just leaving the tubers in the ground. I'm now remembering that was the plan. There's a lot of plans, a lot of little mini plans in the works. So it's hard to keep track every once in a while. You know what's great about this space is that I did a crud ton of work to pull out rocks. There's still a good amount of rocks in here, but that's just like the one-time work that you got to do to really establish these garden beds. I literally just top dressed these with compost and mulched with straw. Recurring theme that I've found this year is that the straw we have, it's pesticide and herbicide residue free, and it's also got nice seeds. So we're also growing wheat as a weed alongside everything else. Comes out fairly easily. These garden beds are like, they'll probably take a little bit more work to get established because the soil is just like not the best. It's not the worst. And again, the compost goes a really long way. I'm also spraying in my Jadam microbial solution, a little bit of Jadam liquid fertilizer to re-nourish the soil, fill the soil up with microbes and nutrients. And then I apply my K&F maintenance spray every week. And so I'm still kind of experimenting with exactly when to transition with flowers from the fermented plant juice, like growth stage based applications, and then swapping water soluble calcium in for the like massive growth boosters, and just like learning how to time that with different plants that we've got at different growing stages. But overall, I'd say it's been going really well. I'm super happy with the plant growth that we've got, especially with how kind of behind we felt just managing this large space. We really consider this kind of a year zero for the farm and the garden in some cases. And it's going great. I mean, we're just learning as we go. I'd say the main thing that we're really trying to wrap our minds around is just the difference between gardening and farming. And so I'll probably speak less to the business side of the farm, because we're still growing our expertise about how to really manage high rotation crops and like flip beds. We're doing it, but it's not where our expertise lies. A lot of our expertise, as you probably know if you've been following us long, is more in bringing out the biology in the soil and the above ground space. And so that's what we get to show. So this is our flower farm. We just started selling to florists wholesale. Cassidy's been bringing buckets of flowers by and starting to sell them, and it's working. What do you know? You just bring produce and people buy it. Yeah, as you can see, like everything is actually growing pretty nice and tall. I just broad forked this soil. We had done work to this in the past. It was unmanaged for a long time, but I just came through, weeded the entire space by hand, and then as I broad forked, things are doing great. Just applying the K&F inputs, trying to time it right. Everything looks pretty green, like dark green. Nothing is really suffering from a lack of nitrogen, even though we've added no synthetic nitrogen or even, again, like organic sources of nitrogen other than our compost, and some rabbit manure very lightly top dressed the soil. This is what it's all about. And I mean, the main thing is that I believe is that all of the biology that we're bringing into the equation through our Jadam microbial solution, and especially through the IMO 4, is really just paying off. It's helping to capture nitrogen from the atmosphere. It's helping to solubilize organic nitrogen within the soil. We will, of course, look at that beautiful monarch right there. So many beautiful butterflies swarming about our property. And that's one of the best things. I mean, dragonflies, tons of different types of bees and flies pollinating everything. Super happy with how this is all turning out. One quick note on these cosmos, we will have just released, or we'll just be about to releasing a video on our trials with our Jadam microbial pesticide. All of these, the base of the stalk was getting nibbled by ants. It was really frustrating because we were having to pull them out and just watch the crop get eviscerated little by little. And I started just applying I actually just applied the Jadam microbial pesticide like once, maybe twice, and they repelled or killed the ants. Really happy with how that worked out. Something else that you probably immediately notice is that we've got our landscape fabric. Not the most ideal thing, I will admit, to be using because it's made out of plastic. But for us, I mean, you can just see like, okay, so where this pathway is not being covered by the landscape fabric, we just put wood chips down in our pathway. But where it's not covering, weeds have sprouted up. We've got German madwort. We've got our straw, unfortunately, is a weed for us, the kernels. We've got dandelions. We've got thistles. We've got everything. That is all very suppressed by both the density of the planting, like in our garden beds, but also just the landscape fabric in general. We wouldn't be able to do this without the landscape fabric. So again, like, you know, if you know anything about the way that a lot of market gardeners use landscape fabric or silage tarps, we're hoping this is a temporary solution. Like eventually we'll kind of get the weed situation under control. Most likely, we're hoping that the landscape fabric works itself out of job after a couple years. But you know, we'll see. I mean, for right now, it's kind of a lifesaver because weeds also steal nutrients from the plants that you're trying to grow. Underneath the landscape fabric, we've got drip tape. And this is like really the main investment, that like financial investment that we made in the farm, other than our seeds, I suppose. And it was really worth it because it just eliminates so much of the need. We're still fine tuning it and seeing like, we need to like secure the drip tape a little bit better, maybe have more of a system. And we're going to actually, like right now, it runs from the front all the way along the back of the property and then along this side fence here, all the way down. We're gonna split it up a little bit so that like this half gets watered and then the top half gets watered. Overall, the drip tape has been awesome. And we do use a sprinkler for like spot watering here and there. Or like if we direct sow a crop, direct seed a crop, we need to overhead water for a bit. And that's great, we use that. But then otherwise for everything else, it's drip tape watered, and that helps us save on water. That, along with the landscape fabric, means that we're not losing as much water. Plus we got tons of organic matter in the soil, which is great. You can kind of see as we move up, we've got different portions of the bed scheduled out for different times of the growing season. So that's kind of the succession planting thing. Wouldn't be able to do that without seed time, which is the map, basically the garden map system that we use. Really useful for us there, but that's why there's kind of different patches that are not planted in or have like small plants, and then right next to it there's much larger plants. Still figuring out how exactly to manage this many plants and like keep track of everything and know strategically for harvesting where everything goes, but that has been really helpful. Another thing you'll be able to tell is as we move further up the property, the soil kind of gets worse and worse, the original state of the soil. And so we're still able to grow crops here. This stump right here in the garden bed is actually the cherry tree stump. And we just took out the cherry tree to open up more of the growing space because it was just casting too much shade. And also we want to be able to really fill our entire backyard. It's not actually that much space when you're trying to do this as a farm for profit, but you can see that like flowers are growing well all the way up until we get to there. And we actually just decided to make the hard decision to put in 3 rows of cover crop because the soil was really not good. It was basically dust. The cover crop is doing pretty well, I would say, like pretty decent for the state that the soil was in. It's gonna obviously help improve the soil. That's why we've got it planted. We might do another round of cover crops here once these are terminated, and then we'll definitely use cover crops in beds that like as we take flowers out and they're done for the season. Very happy with this cover crop mix. It's growing in nice and thick. We've got buckwheat and peas and rye or clover. Can't remember if it's clover or rye. We should probably check that. And then back here, the soil, like we just went probably 3/4 of the way with the cover crop mix because at this point, like the history of this space is our greenhouse actually used to be here, and I moved it down there. That's where the chicken coop is now. And so that soil was super compact and gravelly. But then past it, we had let the chickens roam in the past. And so they had kind of fertilized the soil a little bit, tossed it up. And so it was a bit better. So we decided to put our cucumbers and tomatoes back here and some peppers. The peppers are in the worst soil possible on the property. They're getting moisture robbed by the giant ponderosa pine that's growing up right there. They're doing their best. They're doing their thing. And our cucumbers are probably like, even though they probably look way smaller than yours, depending on where you're growing, they are our pride and joy. Because boy, for some reason, cucumbers have been like the bane of our existence as gardeners. We just always plant them out like too early or way too late. If we plant them too early, they just die to cold weather because they're just weaklings. Anyway, we timed it perfect right now. And so they're all still alive. They look super healthy. I'm gonna attribute a lot of that to the Jadon microbial solution, the KNF inputs that I'm spraying on these. This trellis system is one that I made a long time ago. It's really the main reason I'm using it is because it's what we had, but it's just these T-posts with this PVC, I think this is like a inch PVC T, and then I've got conduit pipe that runs across to hang these clips from. These clips are staked with sticks that I found in the yard, and then I have these clips that you've probably seen before that kind of clip up the vines, and I use these for the cucumbers and the tomatoes. For the cucumbers, one thing I really wanted to make sure, again, just trying to get a really good harvest on these guys, and so I was generous with the spacing, made sure to plant them like at least 2-ish feet apart, maybe 1.5 feet in some cases. And then for the tomatoes, I planted pretty densely because we just don't have that much problem with disease here. For tomatoes, these are brushing up against each other a bit more than maybe you would want if you're in a like super humid environment where disease spreads very quickly. So yeah, super happy with these, how these tomatoes are turning out. They're all flowering, and I'm bringing in water-soluble calcium phosphate to help them with that stage of their plant development. And I'm kind of experimenting with doing a little bit of both because some of these are determinants, some of these are indeterminate tomatoes. So for determinants, once they really start establishing their buds, those are the buds that they're going to be using to make fruit from. And I'll just switch to completely water-soluble calcium acetate and phosphate instead of the fermented plant juice. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, you can check out our video that explains a lot of this stuff. These are the Korean natural farming nutritive cycle theory. For the other plants though, I'm kind of like rotating in like a couple sprays, I've got FPJ in the mix. A couple sprays, I've got water-soluble calcium phosphate and acetate in the mix instead. I think I've gotten a lot of questions recently about people saying like, are you just putting these sprays, diluting these sprays in water and then going through and spraying every single plant one at a time, or do you mix them all together? You mix them all together. So my maintenance solution, which I apply weekly or bi-weekly, depending on if maybe I miss a week here and there, is a combination of OHN, LAB, vinegar, and those are the 3 ones that stay the same. And then for plants that are putting on a large amount of vegetative growth, or want to be putting on a lot of vegetative growth, want to be putting out more solar panels, I have the fermented plant juice and fermented fish amino acids. For plants that are starting to fruit and flower, I'm putting in the water-soluble calcium acetate and phosphate. That is the main kind of distinction there. You've got your core 3, and then you've got your vegetative growth stage and your fruiting, flowering, ripening stage ingredients. And that's how that works. This is our main like veggie patch right now, I'd say. It's just kind of these 4-foot by 8-foot long garden beds. It's been great. We've got our garlic, just harvested the scapes a couple weeks ago for the most part. And then we've got our onions right next door. The onions are looking beautiful. Looking forward to harvesting those as the bulbs start to dry out. Then we just got in another crop of mustard, and we've got some carrots still growing in there. The herbs are kind of nearing the end of their viability as the weather is just extremely heating up. We've got leeks in the back and some celery, some of which is bolted. Whoops. And then we've got our sugar snap pea fortress, which our children, they're like veggie terrorists. They just come in and look, and then they pick the smallest little peas. Like the second that they put out a little pea pod, they take it and they eat it. And so I've had like 2 this entire season. And then they, you know, because they're young, they're both under the age of 6, they kind of destroyed the plants. And so we had to top them off, and they're not really going to produce much more. We're going to take down this tower, unfortunately. But we'll plant something else here. And we'll experiment with some shade cloth. The main bumsky-wumsky about this garden bed is that our brassicas, as always, our Napa cabbages, to be specific, have gotten brutally eviscerated by earwigs. The earwig population is out of control this year. We are working on some solutions to that. The Digidon microbial pesticide actually has shown itself effective against them, but I caught it too late because we took like probably a week-ish off from really managing the farm. When that happened, the cabbages exploded in growth and exploded in devastation. So I got one out of them, but we're gonna do another crop. I think we're gonna seed it real quick here because we just got the replacement seeds. And we'll probably plant somewhere else, but we're also experimenting with a indigenous predatory microorganism. That'll be cool. We'll have an update on that, see how that works. Otherwise, I'm just gonna have to be really diligent about keeping up on the JMP application. And then we come to the front yard. And this is what I'm talking about where, you know, sometimes you plant, you're just very well planned, well organized, and you've got your fertility, like, I'm gonna spread this much compost and I make that much compost and it works. Sometimes you just start way more seeds than you expect, and then they grow into plants and you have to put them somewhere. And so we are just freeballing it out in the front yard. Didn't actually plan on getting this many plants in the ground at all. Some of them are doing well. Some of them definitely needed more of that compost, more help. But we've got a ton going on here. We've got some experiments with apple trees going on. One of them is not doing very well. We might have to replace it. Died almost immediately when we got it, unfortunately, but our other 2 are doing better. We're kind of experimenting with some sort of permaculture syntropic nests. We've also got our raspberries that won't produce until next year. We've got some black currants that we're planting, and we'll plant some elderberries out here. Overall, we want this space in the long run to be a bit of a food forest, but that just takes time and investment over the years.
All right, guys, we're gonna plant our first apple trees. It's a historic moment on the Griffin family farm. We are putting down roots and committing to being here for many years because we will not harvest for many years. So it's a big moment for us.
Well, not many years. We'll probably harvest in a couple.
Okay, like 2 years.
But yeah. Heck yeah. Yeah.
We haven't lived somewhere for 2 years in a while, so this is a big deal.
Yeah.
It's exciting.
And so we're starting where we can, and really, like, we're just doing very little work to amend the soil. I'd say, like, you can actually tell the difference. This is a garden bed where our zucchinis are planted, where I did put compost down. Broad forked it, removed the weeds and a ton of rocks, and then top dressed with a bunch of really nice quality compost. So our zooks are doing great. We've got pumpkins, our butternut squash. I think that a rabbit came and just munched them probably. But our pumpkins and our cantaloupe and watermelon are starting to get established, which is nice. And then we've got our potatoes. We've got 4 beds because we're trialing different things. You saw our like every way to build a garden bed video. These are all different, have received different applications. And so we've got a bokashi food scraps buried far underneath the potatoes where they were planted. We've got compost, we've got nothing, and then we've got IMO 4. The straw is a great mulch because it's super easy to spread. The only problem that I've noticed, and you may have noticed too, is that the wind likes to blow it away. And so that's why compost makes just probably the most elite mulch. In some places, it's blown away more than others. For here, for whatever reason, it just has left. In the nests, it's actually staying, which is nice. Maybe there's like a slight windbreak enough from the wood chip piles around. And then here we are back to our chicken coop. And this is a big pile of cow manure that we have delivered. We're processing it via composting, mixing it with the chicken bedding in part. We've also got a bunch of wood chips, like soil-filled wood chips as a separate pile. And then we've got sticks and, other yard debris and stuff. And so this is just where all of our fertility comes from. We're just trying to use the raw materials on our property, process them with various mechanisms, our chickens, our bokashi, actually hot composting them, wetting down materials, piling them up. There's just these very simple but effective mechanisms that you can employ to build fertility. And so that's the point of this video, guys, is to just kind of showcase where we're at. You may have noticed that we are scattered you know, in our approach in some cases. Some of this is like, I mean, this is not by any means a like fully professional or like perfect setup. This is the first year, but you got to make these investments early on. You got to expect that this will take a couple years to really develop. Soil is not something that can change overnight, but if you make the disciplined decisions to really investments in building good soil, in the long run, this is really going to pay off. We're also investing in like perennial native pollinators that are going to be really helpful to us as we're balancing out the ecosystem here. Really couldn't be happier with how it has really just worked in a lot of cases. We certainly could get more explosive growth if we went the synthetic fertilizer route, and if we just handled every single pest issue with a harsh chemical pesticide. You know, if we just like decided to wipe out disease with store-bought ingredients and stuff. But overall, our message really with this whole channel is that you can do this in accordance with nature. I'm really excited to get to continue to share this with you guys over the years. Guys, if this was an interesting video to you, or if you have any questions, please leave those in the comments. And if you are working on a garden project yourself, I'd love to hear about it in my natural gardening community on School. You can check that out and share what you're up to, ask questions. Very supportive community that we've developed there. And if you are interested in applying any of these specific techniques that I'm talking about, and wondering even just how does this all come together for you in your environment, you can sign up for my natural garden reboot. You can book a call with me and we can chat about if it would be a good fit. If you want to learn more about Korean natural farming, you can check out this video next. And thank you for watching. As always, I'll see you in the next one.